Right, in this video, we're going to create a conversational bot using the new features in Cerb 7.3. So we've already created a guide for this on our website, which you can find at cerb.ai. Go ahead and click into the guide section. Right now it's at the very top, build a conversational bot behavior. If that changes, just look in the bot section. Go ahead and click into that guide. And this just gives a brief introduction about what conversational bots are. I'm going to assume that you already know that. I'm also going to assume that you already have a copy of Cerb set up that you're going to use. And we'll just jump right in. So we're going to create a new bot. It says open the search menu and select bots. This is the search menu and there's bots. And it says click the little plus icon and we're going to create a new bot. So in this case, I'm going to type Cerb. I'm going to give it the owner of Cerb. And I'll go ahead and do what it says here. We'll copy the logo, paste it here, and then we'll just add that so that our bot has a little picture. We can tell it apart from other bots. That matters more in a chat window and things. We're going to go ahead and give it an @mention name of Cerb, and you'll see why that's important later. And we're going to go ahead and leave it with access to all of the events and all of the actions, and then just click Save Changes. And our bot pops up here. We'll go down to the next section. It tells us that we need to create an intent classifier. And in this guide, we don't really get into what classifiers are, but the documentation does cover it pretty well. So you've got a section on classifiers there, and then you also have an example about how to build your own classifier. So we're going to skim past that a bit in this guide since that's not what its main focus is, but you can click into those resources right now if you want to learn what they are. Just pause the video. Next thing the guide tells us to do is to click on Cerb in the yellow notification above the work list, which is right here. And then we want to click on the classifiers button. Now we have no classifiers created yet, but we're going to create one that's owned by this bot. So click the little plus button and we're going to type detect intent because that's what we want to accomplish. And we're going to own it by the bot Cerb. Don't get that confused with owning by Cerb the app. So bot Cerb. Click Save Changes. And our new classifier pops up here. So we're going to go ahead and copy some examples from the guide. And if you hover over this little box here, you can click the copy button. And that should automatically be on your clipboard now. So it says, open up the card for detect intent. Again, we're just going to click the name in the little yellow notification here. And we're going to click the import button at the top of the card. Let's paste our training data in here and click the import button. And we see now we have 4 classifications, which are asking for help, asking the current time, saying hello, and searching a work list. And we have 81 examples, which is all of that data that we just imported here. Those are just different examples for those 4 different intents. You can see here there's actually some examples that have entities. Okay, so if we follow along in the guide here, it's telling us let's go ahead and test a few things inside this classifier. So we have a little box here that we can type in. We could say, I need some help. And it's predicting with 97% confidence that we're asking for help, which is true. If we say howdy, it's predicting that we're saying hello. The confidence is a little lower there just because there's a lot more variety in how we say hi than how we ask for help. We say, what time is it? It knows almost 99% confident that we're asking for the time because that's pretty straightforward there. Say, find my open tickets. And this is a really interesting one because there's a lot of data packed in here to 4 words. We're asking for tickets, which Cerb is recognizing is a context. It's a type of record right there. And then we're asking only for open tickets. And Cerb knows that that's talking about a status. Words like open, unread, completed, active, waiting. All of those things are status words that modify the record that we're talking about. And we're also saying my tickets. We want to find my tickets that are open. And in this case, we know that we're logged in as Kina Help You, who's our demonstration user. So we're going to find the tickets that are owned by Kina that are in the open status, and obviously things that are tickets. So all of that came out of these 4 words, and also the fact that find combined with a status, combined with a record type, combined with a worker, made it very confident, 99.99% confident that we were asking to search a work list. Because it knows in the training data that it's only been told to find things with a status that have a context and that are about a specific worker if they're searching a work list. We don't use those things when we're saying hello. We don't use those things when we're asking the current time or when we're asking for help. And there will be situations where somebody might use the word open in a different context and they're not trying to open up a search work list, but the classifier will become smart enough to understand that. If it only sees a status but it doesn't see a worker, then it learns over time that it has all the evidence it needs to make a confident decision. So now that we've tested those things, it's telling us that we're going to see that we're looking at 4 different intents. So we saw those. We asked for help, we asked the current time, we said hello, and we told it to search a work list. And I didn't run 2 of these examples here, which we can go ahead and do. All it did was another form of saying hello, which would be yo, and it says that's 53% confident because that's not very common. And then we say, I'm lost, which doesn't mention the word help, but it's still almost 97% confident that we were asking for help by saying that we're lost because of the training data. So the next thing that we want to do is create a behavior that will take a chat message from the worker, send it to the classifier, and try to figure out what that worker's intent was. And it's important to understand with classifiers that any text that you give them will end up in one of those classifications. So if you type complete gibberish, it's going to either think you're asking for time, asking for help, saying hello, or searching a work list. And there's ways to work around that. We're not going to get into it here, but it has to do with creating a catch-all with a bunch of random text. And you can also check the confidence. If something's completely gibberish, the confidence is going to be very low, even if it picks a category like it thinks you're asking for help. So the next thing that we need to do here, it says in the property section, right below owner, click Cerb. So this is the property section. This is owner and this is Cerb. We're clicking this just as a shortcut to open back up our bot's card. And last time we clicked classifiers, this time we're going to click behaviors. And just like usual, we're going to click the plus button. And we're going to switch to import mode. And down here, we've created a behavior for you so that you don't have to click around for the next 20 minutes. Just click the copy button and then paste. Once you click Save Changes, it's going to ask you for the classifier. And it does that so that it can set up the behavior for you completely. Otherwise, you would have had to import it, then go back through, edit it, and change it to be your classifier rather than the one we used during testing. Click the little chooser button. It's already going to look for detect intent to make things as easy as possible for you. Just click inside this row. Now we say that we want to link our detect intent classifier that we just created, and we click Save Changes. And that reloaded back here, kind of out of the way, but this is the new behavior that was created for us. And you can see it's fairly involved. So let's go ahead and look through what this does. I'm going to scroll down here so that we're keeping pace with the guide. Let's go ahead and test it first, and then I'll explain how it works. So let's close this out. We'll close this out. Back on our bot, click Edit. And to make this work, we need to tell the bot when somebody chats with it what behavior to use. So again, click the little chooser icon. And the behavior that we're looking for is respond to worker chat, the behavior that we just imported. Click that, you'll see that it's here. All you need to do is click Save Changes. And the guide is going to tell you, you can hit focus on one of these little windows, hit escape, it'll disappear, just do the same thing all the way through. Click the logo up here in the corner. All that did was refresh the page, but you'll notice because we've set up a conversational behavior, we have a new icon that floats around the page down here at the bottom. And if you click on it, we get a little chat window with CerbBot, the bot that we just created, that says, "Hi Kina, say help for a list of things I can help you with." And inside the guide here, we have a couple examples of things we can say to it. So let's just type, "Hi." And it says, "Hello, Kina." We say, "What time is it?" It's 12:25 p.m. Say, "Find my open tickets." And very interestingly, it opens up a work list for us. We told it my open tickets, and there's me as the owner. We say open tickets, and there's open, and clearly we have a ticket work list. So it understood all 3 parts of that. And that could actually get really involved on the kinds of things you can tell it where it adds filters for you. And that's really convenient. It's many steps for you to do those searches by yourself. So if we look back at the guide here, we kind of did the same thing. The last thing it was saying is I need help. So we could just say that, I need help. And it shows us the kinds of things that we can say. So if we scroll down, it says, you'll notice that the bot's helpful even when you don't mention the word help. And we did that earlier when we said I'm lost. Then we have I'm lost and have no idea where to even begin. It gives us the help. We say, what do I say? It gives us the help. What can you do? It gives us the help. And please tell me what to say. and it also gives us the help. You can also just say time, and it will show the time. You can say the time, or you could say right now, and it will also figure that out. You see, there's also a little bit of variation in how it's answering us, just to break up the monotony a bit. And that's what it's saying again. That's the next step of the guide. If you say hi a bunch of times, it'll say hi in different ways. All right, so like I mentioned a second ago, let's go ahead and look at how the behavior works. So an easy way to do that is to click on Cerb's name here inside the chat window. Let's go ahead and close out our ticket search here. And then we can click on behaviors and then open the card for the behavior. And we see this huge tree that we were looking at a second ago. The first thing to look at on this tree is subroutines. And we'll see that there's 3 of them. You can recognize them because they're in a bold black color. And we usually, as a convention, put parentheses at the end of them, which would signify a function or something in programming. So here we have say, work list search, and work list search confirmation. And then we have actions that correspond to those. You can see that this action is calling this subroutine and so on. The one that we're going to look at here is say. And the subroutine itself doesn't really do much. It just defines its name. But what's interesting is what you put inside of a subroutine. And in this case, we have one action in the subroutine. If we edit that, we'll see that all it's doing is taking the say placeholder and printing it out inside of an action that responds to a worker with a message. And that's always in Markdown format. It just means that you can send some rich text, like bold formatting or links, in a simple text format instead of having to write HTML inside of your chat window. Right, so what this means is that anywhere inside of our behavior, we can set this say placeholder and then call the say subroutine, and it will send a message off to the worker again inside their chat window. That's what's happening every time you see one of these responses coming back. We say hi, it says hi. We asked it for help, it said help. So let's go look real quick at exactly what's happening. We'll close this out. When we say hello, it's setting a placeholder into say, and then it's calling the subroutine of say. And we'll go ahead and we'll look at this in a minute, what all this means. So let me close that out. Now, if we follow along in the guide, we're going to see that the first thing that this behavior does is it checks what the worker is saying using the classifier. So let's go ahead and open that up. Inside of this action, we're taking the message that the worker sent us, which is really easily accessible here from the placeholder menu, and we're sending it to the detect intent classifier. And we're going to get back something that we're saving as prediction with an underscore in the front. If we scroll down a little bit here inside the guide, it's telling us what prediction looks like. It's a JSON object, and it has a few fields here. The most interesting of those for what we're going to be doing is what it thinks the classification is and the name of that classification. Once we have this name, we can branch off inside of our behavior here and make a decision. So our decision here is saying the intent is, and then we have 5 options here. So when we're making a decision on the intent, we're taking the name of the classification, and then we're just matching it in these outcomes. And the first thing to look at here is that new conversation isn't actually one of the intents that the classifier gives us. It's something that matches when the message is empty. And that's what happens as soon as we open the chat window here. We click on the chat window and it says something. And it's preemptively telling us you can say help for a list of things it can help you with. And that's important because we don't want the worker just to have a blank chat window pop up and have no idea what to say next. So in this case, the bot welcomes them and they have an idea of the kinds of things they could do. In certain cases, the bot may already have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish. Say the bot books a flight, or it builds a pizza, or it does some other trivial example that people always show off on bots. So it may launch right into the behavior and say, I'm ready to help you book a flight or book a ride. Where are you trying to go? Okay, so let's close this back out. Look at the next part. So that's when it welcomes you into the conversation. Now we're starting to match the real intents that we have. So say hello would be that intent that we were matching earlier. And we would see here when we look at the outcome, we're looking at, again, prediction, classification, name, and we're saying if that is say hello, then this outcome matches. And when an outcome is matched, we go down into its children and we ignore all the other outcomes on the same decision. So in this case, we're going to run respond hello. And then we opened this up a second ago. Now we're really going to get into what it's doing, which is setting the say placeholder, running the say subroutine, and then sending a message back to the worker. So what's going on here? Now, if you haven't used scripting inside of a bot or a snippet in Cerb before, this might seem a little complicated, but it's really not that daunting. It's just packing a lot of helpful functionality into a really small space. So the first thing that it's doing is just setting a variable. Let's go ahead and just remove this real quick so I can show you what's going on. So if we were just to type some text, we would say this is some text, and we click the test button. And we just see that we're literally getting back what we typed. We could do things that are more interesting by setting temporary variables. We can set a variable called text that says, hi there. And then we can print out the variable called text, and it will say hi there. If we got rid of printing out the variable, this would give no output at all. So what we were doing in that example is we were setting an array. And an array can have multiple options like 1, 2, 3, 4. We use brackets around that, square brackets, to say that it's an array, and we use comma to separate each of the elements of that array. So we have members here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, inside of a variable called r. And why that was interesting is it lets us have a little bit of variation when we're answering a question for somebody. If they say hi, we're not always just saying hi. We can say hi, hello, hey, howdy, yo, a bunch of different ways to say hi. And we see that right here. So let's make a simple example. Instead of using numbers, we're just going to copy the example here that's saying hi, hey, or hello. And again, if we just run that, it's going to do nothing. We defined a variable called r for responses that contains an array, but we haven't done anything with it yet. And we can use a function called random and give it r, and we'll see hey, hello, hi. By clicking it a few times, each time it's going to be completely random which of one of these three things we get back. And if you haven't used scripting, again, to print something out from a variable, you use 2 curly braces, and you close it with 2 curly braces. In between, you can use the name of a function or literal strings, and if you use pipes, you get a bunch of filters here that you can use. So this is just printing out a random thing. Let's go ahead and put back what we had there before. And you'll see the same thing. Click the test button. It says, hello, Kina. Hi, Kina. Hi, Kina. And then it goes on and on. Hi there, Kina. So that's doing the same thing that we just did in our simpler example, but we're also taking a string like hello, and we're concatenating the worker's first name, which we got from this little list right here. So that's it. Once we had that, we're just saying some form of hi, and then we're adding their name to it. We're picking a random thing from the list. Right here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different options. And then we're saving whatever output we had here into the say placeholder. And then we're passing that along to the subroutine. So let's go ahead and close this. And that's pretty much how the bot works. You could really get into these complicated examples of work list search is running another subroutine. From there, it's deciding what kind of search. So it makes a decision and then it checks that it had a parameter it got back on the prediction and the context of that parameter matched ticket, on and on. You can go through all this later and click in here to see exactly how it works. But the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to actually make the bot speak back to us. So when it's saying hi here in the chat window, we say hi. It says, hi, Kina, but we're just reading it. So let's look at the second guide, which is Give Bots the Power of Speech with Amazon Polly. Okay, so I'm going to close out the chat window for a moment. I'm going to close out the behavior, and we'll leave ourselves right here with the behavior. Actually, I'm just going to close it all so that you can follow along. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is probably pause this video, read the first section here, because it's going to have you log into your Amazon Web Services account. It's going to have you add a new policy, because you need to give permission for this new worker, this new Cerb Poly worker, to access your Amazon Web Services account, use the Poly service, and check information about its own user, which is how we verify that the credentials even work. So all of this is read-only access. There's nothing it's going to do in there. other than potentially cost you a penny or so to generate some text. So follow along in the guide, create a new user, attach that policy, and then save the credentials. And once you've done all of that, I'm going to assume that you've unpaused the video. And now that we have Amazon Web Services integration, we can create a new connected account that will securely protect that account while at the same time allowing bots to use it. So the first thing we need to do there is to enable the plugin in Cerb that integrates with Amazon Web Services. Click Setup, and in the Plugins menu, go into Plugin Library. Then you'll see down here, well, first let's just search. I'm kind of cheating here. Type AWS, and you'll see Amazon Web Services integration. Click Download and Install. Download and install again to confirm, enable, save. Now that plugin's installed. You want to go to the search menu, connected accounts, and we're going to create it like we're used to doing here a few times. Click the plus button, Amazon Web Services. Okay, so we're going to call this account Cerb, and then put poly in parentheses. And we're going to paste our access ID and our secret key. So I'm going to pause the video real quick and do that. And then I'm going to click the Save Changes button. All right. And once I entered my credentials, assuming that you don't have any problems validating your account, you're going to have a new connected account here for Amazon Web Services owned by you and called AWS Cerb Poly. So because we're going to use this in a bot behavior that we want to share with other bots, we're going to need to transfer the owner. So let's open up the connected account, click the Edit button, and then remove ourselves as the owner and give the account to Cerb as an app. Now click Save Changes. And when something is owned by a worker, it's private to just that worker. So by giving it to Cerb, we're going to give all of Cerb's bots the ability to use the account as well. So let's close this account. We'll skip ahead in the guide because we've just done these steps. Now we're going to create Polybot inside Cerb. We already have CerbBot, but Polybot and CerbBot are going to work together to create speech for conversational bots. And Polybot is something that you're going to be able to use from any bot once this is set up. Okay, so let's close our connected accounts, and we're going to go back to the search menu, and we're going to click Bots. And we're going to hit plus. We're going to type Polybot. We're going to make the owner Cerb, just like the connected account. We're going to make sure it's enabled, and to give it an image, you can just kind of play around here. I don't think there's a readily available logo for Amazon Poly. But you can either type some words here, like you can type out Poly and then generate an image, or you could do something more fun if you're on a Mac and open up the emoji keyboard here. You can see that frequently I've used the little bird. And we can generate that. We can choose a different background color, maybe orange, and then save it. If you're not sure how to type emoji, there are some examples over here in the guide that you can just copy. Or you could just open up Google and type emoji and you're going to find a bunch of them that you can copy. You could also just go to Google Images and find pictures of anything you want, like a parrot, and then paste that into the URL here. All right, so now that we have our little logo, we're going to click Save Changes. And then this time we're not going to add an @ mention because we're not going to be talking to Polybot directly. Only our CerbBot will be talking to Polybot. And we're going to go ahead and lock this one down because it has a very specialized purpose. We're going to say we only want to allow the event of custom bot behavior, and then we only want to allow the action of pre-signing URLs for us in Amazon Web Services. Once you've done that, click Save Changes, and we have Polybot. Skip ahead in the guide here. And it's telling us again that we've created a behavior that you can just import to get started right away. So let's copy that. And then we're going to open the card for Polybot. The shortcut again is just clicking on this little yellow notification. We're going to click Behaviors. We're going to click Plus, Import, and we're going to paste that huge thing. And then click Save Changes. And again, this time it's prompting us for the connected account that we created. So we click the little chooser button. We click this account that we created. And again, it's trying to do everything it can to show us exactly what we need. And then we hit Save Changes. Okay, and we look ahead a little bit in the guide here. It's going to explain how the behavior works. So we can go ahead and dig into that really quick. It's a really simple behavior. There's the behavior, there's an action. The behavior has two variables that are public, text and voice. Text takes the message that you want to have spoken, and the voice, so we've included a few of our favorites. And you can go look in the documentation. We have a link inside the guide for all of the different voices that are supported by Amazon. There are actually a bunch of different languages too. Maybe you don't want the bot to speak English. Maybe you need it to speak Spanish or German or French or some other language. And you could do all of that just by extending the variables here. And the bots that talk to Polybot would just be giving it a little bit more information. So we're keeping it simple here. Text to say, voice to use. Okay, let's close that out. And once we have that information from another bot, we're going to run this action called get a pre-signed URL. And it sends a post request to Amazon Poly, and it's using the US West 2 region here. You may need to change that, but any account can use any region, so there's not really much penalty there for doing that, other than perhaps latency in your connection. We're sending a JSON object, and we're building it in kind of a sophisticated way here, just so that we can cumulatively build a JSON object a little simpler than writing out the JSON and having to escape it. So in this case, we create a new JSON object, which is just two curly braces. We use the dictionary set function to add into that object a key called output format that is an MP3. We want something that's using the MPEG audio format. The voice ID is simply the voice that was selected in that pick list. The text type is text, as opposed to SSML, which is something you can use to actually control pitch curves and pronunciation and have it spell out things as letters instead of words, which is really interesting, but we're going to stick with text for now. And then, again, the text of what you want it to say. We're going to take that object we built, we're going to encode it back to text as JSON, and then we're going to make it pretty, which is mostly for our benefit in the simulator because computers don't really care if it's pretty or not. We're going to set this URL to expire in 60 seconds because it should be usable for a very short time. We're going to send it to somebody's browser, but we don't want them for weeks on end to be able to just keep reloading that same URL. We actually do pay for it when it generates text after some certain level of millions of characters. Then it's going to authenticate this request using our Poly account that we created, our IAM credentials. And once we've done all of that, it's going to give us the URL after having signed it with this account inside Poly speech URL as a placeholder. So there's a fair amount going on here in the back end to generate this URL, then sign it with our credentials, and then give us back that big, huge URL. But our bot that's asking for something is only saying, I have this text, I want it set in this voice, and it's expecting back a URL. It doesn't need to care about how all the rest of this happens. So let's close that. Let's close Polybot because we don't need to use that anymore. And let's skip ahead in the guide. I covered most of this stuff about what's going on. It also talks about testing the behavior with the simulator. I'm going to go ahead and skip that because we're going to get right into it doing something interesting. And there's an example here in the guide if you weren't able to get that working or if you just wanted to skip ahead of what you're going to hear when you click on it. So it says you've probably done a lot of work up to this point. You want to hear the bot say something. So in this example, we said this is some speech generated by Polybot and Cerb. And we hear,
this is some speech generated by Polybot and Cerb,
which is very cool. All right, so now we're going to actually use that Polybot as a delegate in another bot. A delegate's just a fancy way to say that Polybot is providing some services. Our Cerb bot is going to talk to Polybot without talking to Poly directly. So our Cerb bot doesn't need to have credentials to talk to Amazon Web Services or anywhere else. It just needs permission to talk to Polybot, which does all the work for it. So let's close this. Let's go back to our Cerb bot. And if this isn't open, just go to the search menu and click on bots again. Okay, open up Cerb bot. Go into behaviors, and let's open up our behavior for responding to worker chat messages here. And again, remember how everything that the bot was saying back to the worker is going through this say subroutine? Well, you're about to see why. We're going to take this little behavior fragment, and a behavior fragment is just part of this tree that you can move from one copy of Cerb to another or from one bot to another. So we're going to take that fragment, we're going to click on the say subroutine, import, and we're going to paste it. And then it's asking us, where's Polybot? Click the button, say this is Polybot, import. We have a new action that just popped up here. And if we look at it, it's running a behavior on itself using Polybot's get pre-signed speech URL. And if we look at this, that's exactly what's happening. It's on Polybot, and it's that behavior that we imported earlier. And it's going to use the Brian voice, and we can ignore for now what this is doing. Just assume that it's taking the say placeholder, because that would be simpler. It's just doing this. Okay, it's using Brian's voice. We're telling it not to run in the simulator because it really doesn't matter if it grabs a URL that we can't use. And it's saving the output of this into the underscore behavior placeholder. Now we're using respond with script. So instead of sending text to the browser, we're sending some JavaScript to the user's browser. And we say if the behavior placeholder had a key called polyspeech URL, which we know it should because that's what Polybot does, then we open up a script block and we use this devblocks play audio URL function to play the URL that we received. And that's important because there are some protections in different browsers, especially mobile browsers like Safari Mobile, where you can't just start playing sound in somebody's browser without their permission. They need to perform an action that allows you to play sound, like they need to click a button in the interface or do something else. In Cerb, we do that for you. Anytime the chat window's open, we send a blank audio file to our little Cerb audio handler, which is giving the browser permission to start playing sounds now that you've actually performed a click on the chat window. So anytime in the bot you need to actually play sound, you could just use this handy little function here and play sound through the pre-authorized audio controller. So enough talking, let's actually see, well, at least enough talking from me. Let's let the bot talk. Close this, and let's pop open our bot.
Hi Kina, say help for a list of things I can help you with.
So there's our bot, it's talking already. Say hi.
Hey Kina.
Let's say, what time is it?
The time is 12:57 p.m.
And let's say, show my open tickets.
Certainly. I've located the records you're looking for.
And we don't have any open tickets in this test thing. But let's go ahead and see a case where we really don't want it to read everything. Let's say help.
Try one of these. Help. Hi. What time is it? Find my open tickets. Show waiting tickets from January 2015 to now. Find Mara's messages from this year. Search my open tasks. Show my new notifications.
And no matter how interesting it is that the bot is talking to us, nobody wants to sit through that. So let's go back to that action that we just imported in the say subroutine. We're going to edit it. And you notice again, when I was telling you to ignore this little tag here, we're going to use it now. So we're just copying what's in between these single quotes here. And it's just a simple little tag that says stop speaking. Okay, now that we've copied that, we're going to close that. We're going to go into help here inside the action. And it says try one of these. And then let's just paste that little tag and say stop speaking. The person who's seeing the chat message is not going to see this tag, but the bot's going to see it and it's going to stop. And in text, they're going to see the menu of things that they can say, but the bot's not going to sit there for 5 minutes reading everything.
Hi Kina, say help for a list of things I can help you with.
And again, we could tell it to not speak that when it opens up the chat window either, because we probably know what we want to accomplish as soon as we open the chat window by the 3rd or 4th time. Say help.
Try one of these.
And then you get the menu, and it doesn't bother you saying all of that text. So that's really it here. Let's go down to the bottom. We can ask it what time it is and show open tickets, which I've done already. It covers how to use that tag, which I just showed you. And that's really it. And we have a bot where if you open its card, you'll see its classifiers and behaviors, and on its classifier, you could open its card, and then you could add new intents just by importing them. So if we have new examples about something else we want the bot to be able to do, say adding things to our schedule or checking our schedule or giving us reminders or asking about particular contacts, creating tickets, creating tasks, there's a million things you can do with it. So by training the classifier, it can recognize those intents. And then by modifying the behavior, we can actually handle those intents. So we would add an intent to the classifier, you would add a new outcome to the intent decision here, and then do something with it. And in the case of worklist search, you can see how you would pull parameters back out. Like I said, if the intent had mentioned a contact by name, then you would have all of that information about that contact available to you. their name, their title, their email address, what organization they work for, etc. All of those things you could use in the behavior. So that's a pretty solid foundation there for conversational bots in Cerb. Like I said, there's a million things you can do with it. And we're going to have a lot more guides that'll show you how to integrate it with GitHub to pull out issue information, or to do this kind of thing inside Slack, inside of a group chat, or to do it on Twilio from text messages. It's really just the beginning of conversational bots in Cerb. This is a simple example so you can understand that. But we have examples ourselves where we're controlling our lights with our hue, we're controlling the heat and the air with Nest. There's really no limit to the kinds of things that you can do. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, you can email them to us, contact us on Facebook, contact us on Twitter, comment on the guide, and we're interested in seeing what kind of cool stuff you guys create. So thanks for watching.